Hey coders, let's talk about insertion sort today. In this video, we are going to cover a couple of topics. The first one would be we want to cover an overview of what is insertion sort is all about. And then we will see implementation of insertion sort using JavaScript. So let's start. Let's say you got a list of items. Okay. In insertion sort, you pick the very first element and then compare it with all other element. So in first iteration, you will pick the first element in the list. On the second iteration, you will pick the second element in the list. Okay. So let's call picking up of the first element on the first iteration as key. With this basic understanding, there are only couple of rules that you have to follow to achieve insertion sort. Okay. The first rule is if the key is less than current iterating number. So if you have picked a number in the list, you always go to the left of the current selected number. And that is what I mean by the current iterating number. If the current iterating number is less, then you shift that number forward. From left, you move the number one index above to the current index of the number, and then you will move on to the next number that is available to the left. So you will repeat unless until the the current key is lesser than. Okay. When you find a number which is greater than the current key, that's where you go and do the insertion of the key that is currently available. Okay. Hope it makes sense, but to make it even clear, let's see a example of a list containing 5 3 4 2. Okay, to start with, the very first number within the list is 5, so we have picked that number and currently the key is going to be 5. Okay, we want to compare this 5 with the number that is available in the left. Since there is no number that is available to the left, key key 5 is considered to be sorted. Then we move on to the next iteration and we pick the number 3 which is next on the list. So now 3 is the key. We are going to compare 3 with 5 which is what we got in the left. So we are going to compare 5 with the key. Since 3 is lesser than 5, we are going to insert 3. This is rule number 2 for us. This should leave us on the second iteration the first two number to be sorted. Then we move on to the third iteration where we pick 4, which is the third number in the list, and this is the key for us currently. So we repeat comparing 4 with 5. Since 4, which is currently the key, is lesser than 5, we have to shift 5 to the right one step above. So we have shift 5, the position of 5 to the place of 4, as you could see now. Then what we have to do is we have to compare 4 with the next number, which is 3. Since 3 is lesser than 4, that's where we insert 4. Since we are trying to insert on the right place, that's why it is called an insertion sort. Then we move on to the last number in the list, which is 2. Since on the fourth iteration we have picked 2, the current key is 2. We are going to compare 2 with the number that is available on the left. Since 5 is greater than 2, we are going to shift 5 one step above. Then we are going to compare the key 2 with 4. Since 2 is lesser than 4, 4 will be shift to the right one level above. We repeat the same to the last element in the list, which is 3. Since 3 is also greater than 2, we shift 3. Since there is no more element to compare, we insert 2 at the very first place in the list. Okay, then we try to check if there are any more element in the list. Since we have exhausted all the element in the list, this would mark the list to be in a sorted place. So the final result of this unsorted list to a sorted list, what we have got is 2, 3, 4, 5, which you could see that it is sorted. Now see a working example of insertion sort using JavaScript. I'm writing all my JavaScript function for this particular example in an HTML file, where I will open this HTML file in an Chrome browser, and I will show you the output of this particular function in console window available in developer tools of Chrome. So to start with, let me declare a variable of a function. So I'm going to have a function called insertion sort, where it takes in a list of items. I'm going to use fat arrow. I'm going to use fat arrow. So as you know, I want to iterate all the element in the list. So I'm going to have a very basic for loop, where I declare a variable called I, and then iterate it till the length of the array. And I'm going to increment I, so that I will iterate through all the element in the list. This is a very basic for loop syntax to run through all the element within an array. So this is just straightforward. So at the start of every iteration, what I want is I want a variable called key, where it will hold the current value available at the iteration position. Let's say on very first iteration, uh, where I is equal to 0, the key will be 5. On the next iteration, where the I is equal to 1, where I've listed the position for you for your understanding in the bottom. So on the if the value of I is 1, the key value will be 3. If the value of if my current iteration is the third iteration, um, my key will be 4. So this will be holded on the variable called key. Let me declare a variable called j. So what we actually want to do on an insertion sort is we want to pick an element in the position of key and then compare it with all the element that is available on its left. So if I take 3 on this particular list, I want to compare 5. If I want to pick 4, I want to compare 3 as well as 4. That's what I want to do on this case. So I want to run from, I want to compare everything on a left. So j at the start of a loop, I want to iterate, right? So since I want to iterate, I'm having a loop. At the start of an iteration, what I want is I want the current position of the I, and I subtract 1 to it. So this would give me 0. Let's say if I want to compare 3 with everything on the left, 3 current position is 1, where I holds this information. I want to compare it with 5, where the position of 5 is 0. So if I want to do it with 4, it has to iterate from 1 and 0. That's where I want to have this loop. What it has to do is it has to run until the last element, I mean, or the very first element in the list where the index uh, is 0. So I want to run until the value of j is 0. And I also want to compare whether the current key value, the current key value is lesser than the item that is available at the position of I. So so if if the current value of key is, let's say, 3, and the value that is available at the position to its left, to its left is greater. If it is greater, what we want to do is, it is literally rule number 1. So we apply rule number 1. What do we mean is, we move the if it is greater than the key, we shift the element from left to right. Correct? So that's what we actually do. So let me move this number. So if we identify a number that is greater, what we actually do is we move that to the next position in J. So whatever element that we have got in J position, we will move that to the next position, and then we move on to the next number. So since we are in loop, I just add J minus minus. So this should identify if there is a smaller number, if there is a bigger number than the key, then it just moves to the right. If this condition fails, or we have reached the last element, then we go and insert the key on the place where we have J, right? So all I have to do is insert the key there. Okay, so uh, this sh- th- this for loop would help us achieve insertion sort. As an example, let's see how this would work on a couple of iteration. So to start with, let's start with the value of I as 0. So what would be the value of key is, we are an item of 0. On item of 0, what we actually have is, at the position 0, what we have is 5. So we will have 5 as the value of key to start with. Then what would happen is, the value of j, what we will have is, the value of I is currently 0. 0 minus 1, value of j to start with is 1. And then it will try to move and compare this particular condition. So currently j is minus 1, minus 1 is greater than 0 is a false statement, so this for loop will never get executed. So it would try to insert the key on item j is currently minus 1 plus 1, which is actually 0. We will insert 5 at item of index 0. So at the end of first iteration, the end result, what we have actually got is, 5 would remain at the same place, 3 would be still on same, and uh, 4 will remain on the same place, and 2 will remain on the same place. So it will move on to the next iteration, where I would change to 1, and item of 1 is actually 3. As you could see, the position 1 holds the value of 3. So the current value of the key is actually 3. Then the value of j is the current value of I minus 1. I is actually 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. So the current value of j is 0. Since 0 is greater than or equal to 0 is true, because 0 is equal to 0, it is trying to compare whether the value of key is lesser than item that is available in J. Item at J, what is item at J? Literally, it is item that is available at the position 0. Okay, we already know the item that is available on 0, which is 5. So what this means is, 3 is lesser than 5. That's what this actually means, correct? Because we are comparing key. Key is currently 3, and the item available at the position 0 is 5. So 5 is obviously greater than 3. So this have identified a number which is greater than key. So what we have to do is just shift it to the right. So the current value of j is 0. So 0 plus 1 is 1. So at the position of 1, whatever is available as the current j position, which is 5, so we'll move that value. Once it is moved, we the next iteration in the for loop will get executed. So j will be decremented by 1. So the current value of j is -1. And then it would compare whether -1 is greater than or equal to 0. Since this condition is false, it comes out of this loop. So currently j value is -1 plus 1 as per item j plus 1. So the current value of item, what we will do is we will insert the value of key. So at the end of the second iteration, what we would actually have got is uh, at the very first place we would have 3. 5 would have moved to its right, and then we would be left with this kind of scenario. So this kind of iteration would repeat until all the element within the list are iterated. So this should give us the final result what we desire. So let me call this method with an example. So let me pass in the same array so that we can see this as an output. So let me print the value for you using console.log. Let me call insertion sort. Let me pass in the value. So once, okay, I have not written the value. That's the reason it have not printed. So let me return the list. So this particular list should be sorted. Let me clear the screen and let me call. So the list whatever we passed is 5342, and the list is now sorted using insertion sort. So I can call in any value. Let me pass in an array of 9876543221. So if I pass in this value, it would still sort me a list. I can pass in any list of an array to this function, and it should sort me. Okay. So as usual, we have checked in all the code that is used on this particular example into Git. I'll add a link on the description of this particular video for you to verify in future. Again, thanks for watching this video. Please do like, share, and subscribe to this channel.